experimented with the dark kitchen model. They either utilize their existing assets or they've rented space in that direction. So you can see a couple of products there: noodles in a box, kebabs, Asian, that travel really well, and that has become a very substantial part of their business. That delivery side of it. Now, this is not a this is our classification. It doesn't pretend to be anything more than what we have experimented. We have experienced it. Sorry. In our day-to-day activity, different types of dark kitchen. So the first type that we all have probably in our mind is where you go and rent a dark kitchen space. There are companies that make this their core business. They could be the likes of food stars, or they could be even delivery aggregators that have this side of the business. Probably you'll know the Deliveroo Editions model as well, something that it's been done, and they're stepping up the development of these kitchens. They declared recently as well. So certainly they're going in that direction. These are normally kitchens we are fully kitted out. They're purpose built for delivery. Some of them may come with a collection, with a walk-in facility as well for customers, if located in convenient locations. In my experience, this type of spaces, normally you will find either big brands, so the likes of Wagamama's or Dishum. So they tend to be kind of mono brand dimensional businesses. They are often physical brands, so they exist on the high street. But I've seen also others operating virtual brands on a multi-brand basis in these kind of spaces. So that's one option, the rented option. You go and rent the dark kitchen space. The second option is where you start from your existing estate. Perhaps you own a central production kitchen, or you have different branches in your restaurant. So a lot of operators, when they set out to operate dark kitchens, they looked at their estate first and trying to sweat their assets. So that's the second model. The second model is really, I've seen obviously different businesses, but more often than not, these are ranges or suites of brands that are operated out of the same venue, and they are virtual brands. So I've seen definitely LKN, but there's others as well that they basically use some of their restaurants, or perhaps they rented a space on the high street, a restaurant unit on the high street on a low rent in a secondary position, and made it a dark kitchen and forgot completely about the front of house dimension. Perhaps thinking during COVID, we don't need that, but we may need that in the future as well. So they've taken not a dark kitchen, but a full restaurant unit. And it's been a way to experiment with a number of brands on a low cost basis. And that has moved some of these operators into the third model, which is the franchise model. So once they have trialed and tested these virtual brands in the dark kitchen, then they set out to license them or franchise them into other operators that have the kitchens, typically hotels, but also pubs, restaurants, sort of independent restaurants, units, contractually franchise restaurants. They could not operate other brands. And also, anything catering companies, etc. So the idea here is that you operate as a dark kitchen, but the brands you operate are somebody else's. So they are third-party brands that have been tested in the market. And how many? So if it's mono or multi, it is really depending on the spare capacity. Normally, people don't look at reconfiguring kitchens, or they do it on a zero capex basis. So they're not actually investing in the kitchen space, but they look what they have and estimate, given the spare capacity, and the business may have peaks and throws, or it may be busier during the week, or at the weekend, or it may be kind of a daily sales trend. They will see when there's spare capacity in the kitchen, and then together with the brand provider, agree on a brand lineup at that specific locations to maximize the sales opportunities. So first one is typically new operators or high street brands renting space. The second is existing operators, for the most part, starting from their own estate. And the third option is somebody who is not actually a creator, but is more of an operator, operating third-party brands. So these are all dark kitchen businesses, but after all, there's very different ways of doing it. So lots of experiences, but what have been the success factor? First, you need to define success. So is, of course, financial success important? Important to do the maths, as we will discover further down the presentation. But there's also no investment options. So actually, in my experience, the most successful operators, they are the ones that have started from an existing asset, either within their own company, or they've set out to rent an existing asset, say an existing restaurant unit, with no investment. Obviously, in the first scenario, where you're renting from a kitchen provider, then they may not be much upfront cost, but there will be a certain occupancy cost and as an operating cost. So you have to obviously consider that trade-off. Other elements I would like to draw your attention to. It's about the benefit of those kind of franchise options. Certainly, they've been extremely popular. They rolled out really fast. Some of them. It's because obviously they have a delivery model from an operational standpoint that is already tested. Obviously, you can look at how well they're doing in other locations, and some of them start to have tens of locations, so you can really make a fairly educated guess on the volume you could get in a new location. Obviously, they come also with the benefit of having a bigger business on delivery, so probably enjoy a lower rate in most cases. And of course, it's a bigger business from a supply chain point of view as well. But the objective is also, scalability, is to scale the brand, especially in the presence of capital constraints. So this is clearly, as I said before, it can be also a no capex project. Very, very helpful in any strategy, and we've seen it in the market. Dark kitchen is almost invariably a new store format within a brand portfolio. The last is about testing. So we've seen obviously product testing, entire new menu testings on dark kitchens, even brand testing. Some brands clearly started on a dark kitchen basis, and then some of them even moved as brick and mortar from there. There's certainly a few examples in that area, but also in terms of market. So some brands have gone into the Middle East as a purely on a delivery basis, for example. Some examples in that area as well. So when actually, as a company, we're really in favor of the strategy internationally. We think there are more challenges by doing that, but that's a different. It's not a discussion for today. So success factors. Definitely, you need to hit the sales, so your top line is important. How many of those sales you need to do, it really depends on your own business. But in my experience, working with high street businesses going on a delivery, on a dark kitchen format, it tends to be within that sort of area between, in the rented scenario, where you have an occupancy cost of between 3 and 5K a week. A month, you would need to have this sort of sales. But obviously, if your cost is high, that may be 20 grand a week. I think being able to estimate those sales is really important. If you don't get the sales, then the business will not work. And a lot of people have overestimated the type of sales they can do from delivery kitchens. It is a function of brand awareness. Obviously, I mentioned Dishoom earlier. If you're Dishoom, you can expect a certain level. If you have a brick and mortar brand, you can expect obviously more volume if you're a successful brand. So that's quite obvious. The other one is your product appeal. So the category you're in. if you are relevant in the key day parts. So delivery is mainly a dinner business, and having an offer that is relevant at dinner is definitely an advantage. You can't do without dinner in delivery. And in fact, actually, breakfast focused or brunch focused concepts, they've never done extremely well on delivery. And then your overall presentation, so your branding, your food photography, so how appealing is the overall offer, your operations model and your performance on delivery, which is a function also on how well you're organized for delivery, and that is reflected in the rate. So anything below 4.5, that's going to be quite difficult to cut through the noise of the myriad of delivery options on aggregators. And the last is about marketing. So marketing in the local area. So I've seen brands doing that extremely well, and they reap the benefits of that, substantial benefits. So having expertise in that area is a competitive advantage, but also on the platforms themselves. So the carousel, the newsletter, all these ways, the offers you do on the platforms, all this is important to drive revenue. Apart from the revenue, then it's all about making sure that trickles down to profit. So what are the key things to look at? Definitely your platform commission. So if you're on 20%, it's a lot different scenario if you're on 35% commission. So that makes it or break it. Occupancy cost also important. So in scenario number one, you're looking at the highest cost when you're renting a kitchen from a service kitchen. There are options to take over existing units on high streets, especially during COVID. That was actually very relevant. A lot of secondary restaurant units coming on the market on lower rents than in the first scenario. The technology you have in place, so you don't need to have, like, for example, taster.com, they will have certain developers and they have their own technology, their own algorithms. I mean, you don't need to have that. You can also have something which is more off the shelf, but perhaps is adapted and made bespoke to your business. So that's also quite important to have in place. And then you need to estimate your labor and food costs. And don't think it's going to be the same as on high street, because regarding food costs, you may have a slightly different menu, slightly different portion sizes. You may bundle your offers. So how food cost comes in that scenario, you need to really understand. And also labor, because it seems obvious that if you cut the front of house, labor is going to be lower. It actually is not entirely true. You may risk operators often complicate it by adding too many brands that are not integrated but between themselves. And that will increase the wastage, will increase labor hours, and overall your labor will become higher than the one on the high street in some cases. So it's really important to relook at the P&L and how it would vary on a dark kitchen basis. So these are, for me, the key things. In terms of delivery market, definitely we can say we all know that it's doing well, it's growing. I think it's an ingrained habit. Using these delivery aggregators, the Just Eats, the Deliveroos, is steadily increasing in the overall population. I think this came out in November 2021, so it's just a few months old, showing a steady growth in the usage of this platform. This one is about day parts, so it shows that dinner is still growing. However, it's growing less than other day parts. It's becoming more of an all-day habit to order on delivery, where dinner is always dominant, but other day parts are growing. And if you look at breakfast and brunch together, they make quite a substantial share of the overall orders, and growing in time, again, since November 2021. And the last one is really what make people order on delivery. Obviously, everybody loves a free delivery, not waiting for long, good food hygiene was important before, even more now during COVID. This was November 2021 again. So having a wide menu option, I think this is a bit deceiving because people want choice, but they also want you to choose for them, to make a selection for them. So they will always say they want choice, but don't take it that you need to have a huge menu, because that doesn't work. Option for collection, yes, of course. In certain locations, definitely for dark kitchens to have a collection option is definitely a good idea. Just bear in mind the one in, for example, in Camden Road, I think it's the Jacuna dark kitchen with a collection option for the customer. Yeah, so in terms of other elements, having a physical restaurant is probably the most important out of this whole thing. So 23% of the respondents to this survey by Cantor, they basically said that if a restaurant has a physical presence, then they will be more inclined to order from it on delivery. So quite important to know that. And the rest is obviously healthier food, and that's also named as one of the reasons, but not the prominent one. So I think, it's about, I will hand over to the Aviko guys now for this section, but the principle here is that there's work to be done, I think, with those suppliers when we relook at the menu, to work with them with products that really can work well on delivery, and you can use their advice on this.
Okay, I've got one slide before handing back to Matteo for the conclusions from today's presentation. The final slide from myself is regarding menu management and products made for delivery and limited time offers. Within the dark kitchen arena, it's probably one of the largest growth areas in the food industry right now. There is a lot of competition out there for you, and a strong brand is key. To develop a strong brand, you need consistency and to be able to deliver restaurant quality food. So choosing the right product and the right packaging is key. And you have to test and evaluate your offering on a regular basis. Aviko have developed a range of products bespoke for home delivery. On the right-hand side of this slide, you can see the Super Crunch fries. These are available in various different shapes and forms. With a Super Crunch coating, it allows the product to stay crisper and hotter for longer, and will stay hot for up to 25 minutes for home delivery. And this has been proven with some of the case studies that we have done with several leading restaurant brands. We also have products like the Aviko Grip and Dip. The Grip and Dip is a great product for loaded fries. If you are to serve this product on a menu, it's recommended to send the product out with the sauces and toppings separately, so the product will go soggy. This also means that it's an interactive product when it's delivered to the family or whoever. On the LTOs, we've got products such as the mac and cheese triangles. They create a buzz. They can also be used in various ways. So you can use them as a side, a topper to a burger, etc. LTOs allow you to try new products. This will allow you to, when you try these new products, it will also help you evaluate your menu, and they could also replace the dogs on your menu going forwards. LTOs can be main dishes, sauces, sides, or items that are on trend. I will now hand over to Matteo for the conclusions.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, so in terms of conclusions, what I would say, so what lessons can we draw from our experience of 2 years in this segment? Definitely, there are good reasons to look into operating dark kitchens, for sure. The delivery market is expanding, of course, and it's driven by the preference of the UK consumer for convenience. There's a shift away from offices that synergizes with the changes in the sort of use permit and development rights for commercial properties. So long story short, bottom line is that prime space is freed in central locations. So there are opportunities around that. There are also, I think there's more there's been a professionalization of the dark kitchen space, both on the brand side, where brands have been really built for delivery. There's a lot more of those. There's more technology available for dark kitchen operators, and even other services. Like, I mean, I just came across a marketing agency that works specifically on delivery with brands. So there's a few service providers in the industry that were not there before. And also consumers, on the other hand, they are getting used to ordering from brands that have no physical presence at all. And in fact, this is what we found earlier in the presentation. So 29% of consumers have ordered a takeaway for home delivery from a delivery-only brand, and 22% say that we're going to do that in the future. So, more than 50% of the panel is actually have favorable views of brands that exist just on delivery. And this is probably an effect of the professionalization of the industry. There are also some caveats, because definitely we're seeing that consumers that have, among the consumers are also the visual decision makers. So we know for sure that if a restaurant has a physical presence on the high street, we will have a certain percentage of the population that will be more inclined to order from them compared to another brand that doesn't have that. So having that brick and mortar presence is still key, and it's also because consumers in the UK, they like to support local businesses. There is definitely a trend towards that. So perhaps the solution is, I don't know, setting up mobile units on high streets and run a dark kitchen from there. So having the benefit of the wide exposure together with the benefit of being a delivery only business, perhaps. I don't know, just trying to think outside the box, but clearly there's two different tendencies at play here. And some final advice, I would say, definitely do the maths. So, build your provisionals, really think about how your numbers will change in this new format. The most successful players we've come across as Seeds Consulting in the last 2 years, they are the ones that were really clever in reusing something that existed, or just sweating an existing asset, as opposed to create something new or rent fully fitted kitchens. Definitely more success in the first area. And for those of you who are creators, obviously feel free to ignore this. You want to create your own concept, you have your own idea, just go for it. But everybody else, I would say, look at the operation. If you are an operator, just don't try and be a creator. So there's a lot of brands out in the market which already been proven, where you can estimate your sales, where you become part of a bigger business, you benefit from economies of scale, lower rates. I think it's a very good idea for anybody who's not a creator to look at a range of existing virtual brands that can take away that risk, which is for any new operator, with a new operator in a new brand is at the highest. So what we're trying to take away here is the brand risk. And then it's all down to you as an operation and the choice of location, of course. So I'll hand over now to Paul, which will introduce our next guest.
Joining us for the Q&A is Philip McGuinness. He's the founder of Tutamu and Tiny Cloud Kitchens. We'll now start the Q&A session. If anybody's got any questions, please use the Q&A box, chat box in the bottom right-hand corner. Has anybody got any questions? Okay, first question. When starting a new concept, what are the most successful delivery concepts?
Good morning, Paul. Good morning, everybody. I think, as we all know, for years, pizza has been obviously the most successful in terms of delivery. We've seen that through Domino's, through Pizza Hut. But one of the things I think that the whole the trend with lockdown, etc., is that most people have found ways to be able to deliver their existing product. So if you look at the likes of Hawksmoor, they found a way to deliver, their premium steak concept. So there's lots of ways to be able to deliver products, and we know that because the expansion and the innovation around packaging has enabled people to be able to do that. But for years, the Chinese takeaway, the Indian takeaway, independents, they have been delivering this very successfully for a long time without any technology, and still do it successfully as well.
Okay, next question is from Mark Irish. What are the key factors a supplier needs to consider when testing products for this market? For my own side, it's about the quality of the product and taking into the factors of the home delivery. So it's working out the normal equipment that the dark kitchen will have, the concept, how long the product had to stay hot for, the quality of the product. Those are the key items. Okay, on to the next question from Gemma Shea. Have you converted an open working kitchen into a dark kitchen? If so, how did the team transition? Did they stay bearing in mind no customer face, no face-to-face interaction?
So I've been in the delivery business for 12 years, and 70% of our revenue to our restaurant business has come from delivery and takeaway for the last 12 years. What we have done very successfully is a number of different things. Number one, we've opened a large number of dark kitchens and taken successful brands and added them into our existing restaurants to be able to also test whether they're successful. So just because a brand is successful in a dark kitchen, getting that and putting into a restaurant is a phase two, and making sure that they actually are able to work with an existing product range takes a bit of analysis. Number one is what are the downtime, uptime, in terms of existing equipment. So what are the key parts of equipment? From our perspective, we are specialists in Pan-Asian. So the oven is a critical part, the fryer is a critical part. So does your existing product range work effectively with that? The way we tested our first dark kitchen is that we actually took some of our most unskilled labor and actually opened a dark kitchen and went through different forms of training, depending on the product concept, depending on the product range. So we did a lot of testing initially in order to make sure that the products that we have, the concepts that we have, will fit different levels of skill set. We found that people actually preferred working in the dark kitchen. They had no customer interaction. They had very set, they had one type of, didn't have plates plus packaging. They only had packaging. So we found that it was easier to integrate existing staff into a dark kitchen. Where the challenge is making sure that getting a virtual brand into an existing restaurant, making sure that the team are bought into the reasons why you're doing that. Number one is that it's going to bring down your labor. Okay. Number two is that it's going to sweat your existing kitchen team and in terms of the equipment. And those two critical things will then get buy-in. But unless you've got buy-in from a kitchen team initially, then it won't work. Bring in technology. And it's, as Matteo mentioned, there are lots of different tech out there in order to do it. But making sure that the existing product range fits in with the existing restaurant concept is critical. And using tech to be able to manage that is probably the fundamental part of this.
Okay, on to the next question. This one is probably for Matteo. What is the success and failure rate for startups and why?
Yes, hi, thank you, Paul. the startups failure rate, in my experience, is very high. And that's why, as a company, we always tend to look at what's existing in the market. I think normally I found that if the startup is set up by people who are experienced it and they've been there and done it, sort of thing, obviously the success rate is higher. But new operators, not having the right experience, going into a new format or a new brand, definitely compounds the risk of failure.
I think, Paul, on that point there, it's not about just plugging in something into Deliveroo or Just Eat and then think it's going to work, okay? But understanding the local community, understanding the local area, and delivery is only within a 2-kilometer radius. So your core area is actually is quite small. So making sure that you are the leader in that pack is critical. So making sure that your brand fits a demographic, your brand fits within the consumer trend is absolutely critical. That requires a lot of investment, and it also requires to make sure that you have the competencies already in your team before you even go about it.
Okay, the next question is from Raz. What is a good net profit percentage for the dark kitchen model?
I suppose it's really, that question is really going to depend on the food quality in terms of the actual food concept you're delivering, because obviously you'll have different margins in terms of that. It's also going to depend on the rental. But we would be looking at, from our perspective, our model is on virtual brands is based on incremental sales. So we would look at the existing operator holding their labor trend, and we would then simply be plugging in and making sure that we can create that, get that labor more efficient. So from our perspective, it's really about you not investing in any more labor. It's really about making sure that we get your existing labor as efficient as possible. Different, I suppose, whether it's a restaurant or a hotel that we deliver or a bar, each one has their own KPIs that they must work towards. And our plan really is to make each of those areas a lot more efficient. From a dark kitchen perspective, if you're going to go in and work with a Food Stars, it's the rental is quite high because they're giving you the full fit out. If you're going to go into, for example, a secondary location which has a small takeaway, which has a delivery unit, we would look at anywhere between 15 to 20% EBITDA from that scenario. But each of them require, I think, very, very, very kind of detailed analysis. But from ours, we like the whole area where, yes, it's a dark kitchen, but has a little bit of takeaway, because we find the takeaway can give you between 20 to 30% of your actual overall sales, and delivery will give you about 70%. That's what we would find. So our models really are everything from restaurant with bolt-on, a dark kitchen, but also a dark kitchen kind of with the takeaway, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Philip. The next question comes from Thomas. It's a 2-part question. Even though roughly 50% of consumers are willing to order from dark kitchens, do you see any backlash against virtual brands? And secondly, how aware are consumers that there is food coming from a virtual brand rather than a high street kitchen?
So we see a very good virtual brand, well marketed, well thought through, will to the consumer feel as if it's a bricks and mortar site. Okay, if your web is done, if your social media is strong, it'll feel as if it's a bricks and mortar site. If you go onto a Deliveroo, what you'll see is you'll actually see the address of that location on Deliveroo. So people, what they will do is they will look exactly. They will go and Google that address and understand exactly where that food is coming from. So the consumer does actually do their own bit of research before they actually buy. So we would see that if you do not have a very strong brand presence, then you just won't survive. And like Matteo has made a kind of, I suppose, relevance to the likes of the Shoe and Wagamama. There's a reason why they've done very well from a dark kitchen perspective, is because they've got massive brand presence. And unless you have that brand presence as an independent within a local 2 kilometer, unless you own that within a 2 kilometer radius, you just won't survive. The second part of the question, I can't actually see it on the screen.
How aware are consumers that their food is coming from a virtual brand rather than a high street kitchen?
So I think what the consumer is doing is the consumer is looking at, does it have social media presence? Does it have web presence? Where is it exactly? I think the consumer is now more aware than ever. But I think it's a specific type of consumer. I think it's a specific type of age group that actually understands it. And I think that age group is growing from an age perspective as well. So I think the consumer knows it. But I think the address in terms of where it's coming from, I think is a critical part. If they know the establishment, if the good establishment, it also helps from a virtual brand presence.
Okay. From my own side, you mentioned on Wagamama and Dishoom, while they've got a really good restaurant high street present currently, one of their key strengths as well are their centralized kitchen units, which help produce a product for their dark sites. But also one of the comments that you came up with regarding how dark sites operate different to restaurants. From experience, I've seen that dark kitchens can sometimes be a bit more focused than the high street sites because they've only got their focus on one, and they're actually primed and planned just to operate for home delivery.
But Paul, the critical thing there is that they have volume. Because they've got volume, they can make it work, right? And unless they've got volume, as Matteo said, anywhere between 7 to 10K a week, they will struggle to survive.
Okay, the next question, which I think is aimed at me, is what advice can you give to keep fries hot and crispy, as they're often soggy and cold on delivery? To start with, personally, I would say test your fries, deliver them to your home address, see how they arrive. For me, it's about having a coated fry, having the right packaging. Cardboard packaging is best with holes in, which allows any steam to escape, and it keeps the product hot and crispier for longer. Okay, next question. A bricks and mortar type of operation builds on social media comments and reviews from their customers. What are your experience with customers ordering from ghost kitchens, giving any reviews?
So from our experience, the consumer deals with a ghost kitchen exactly the same way as a restaurant. So, they interact exactly the same way. So they'll give feedback, they'll go on to a Google page, they will go on to our review pages, and they will leave comments exactly the same way. So as I said to you, or as I said already, having critical brand presence, it means that the consumer will treat it as if it's a normal bricks and mortar site. And that's what you want. You want the consumer, but you also want to make sure that you have people being able to reply and making sure that if there is a complaint, that we deal with those ASAP to be able to make sure that we keep that consumer confidence going. And I think the more that we communicate, the better, because it'll feel as if it is an actual live brand, from a bricks and mortar perspective. And I think some of the best virtual brands, feel like they've got massive high street presence.
Okay, we have another question from Thomas, just following on from his earlier question. If you are building a virtual brand from scratch, would you then recommend the need to have a social media web presence to enable consumers to interact with the brand?
So my view, 100%. The consumer will go and look at, where's this brand come from? What's the address? What's the web presence? Do they have, what's the values? Does it have a mission? What does a brand stand for? All that. The consumer wants to know everything. And the consumer at the moment is so nimble that with a couple of quick clicks of a button, they understand exactly who you are, where you've come from. And if it's from the address, as I keep on saying, is critical, because once they have an affiliation with where it is on the high street, it gives them more confidence. So the answer is 100%. I think that's a critical part of your investment.
And if I can add on that, I think there's a critical issue with some of the operators that they see as brand generation being their main driver. So they start creating a lot of different brands, but then you need to think that for each of these brands, you need to go deep in creating that presence. So if you have 50 brands, it's very difficult. You'll be able to have the manpower to put that into place. So I think that's where they got it wrong. It's where you try and add category, add brand without adding depth in each brand. The consumer will perceive that. They will not perceive you as a brand unless you do that.
Okay, it appears that we've got one last question to ask. How do you see dark kitchens evolving in the next 5 years?
So, I mean, it's evolved massively over the last 2 years. You know, one of the critical areas now is going to be, and I think even just initially over the next 12 months is going to be where different menus and different dishes are going to pop up depending on, you know, who your consumer is, who your demographic is, who you are, etc. So I think a lot of this tailoring menus, tailoring times will be a huge part of it. The question is that, you know, can you as an ordinary consumer, if you want your own delivery business, as well as having, you know, working with Deliveroo's and Just Eat, can you have your own delivery platform to drive further revenue to be able to compete on that? I think that will be a challenge because people do not want to be always working with, you know, third-party providers. They wouldn't mind necessarily controlling their own delivery business. But I think delivery is on the up. I think it's only in its infancy, is my honest view. And I think it's massively developed with the likes of lockdown. But what it's done is that I think every single food concept can have an element of delivery because of the innovation of packaging. So if we just take the very basics of the consumer now wants their food on demand, quality and fast. And every single different food concept can deliver on that. Now, they maybe only have 10 items on a menu instead of their 30 in their restaurant. That doesn't matter. So I think that every food concept will have an element of delivery. So, and we've seen that over the last while. I think technology is just going to play a bigger role. And, you know, if we all read, I think there's a great book out there at the moment, Delivering the Digital Restaurant. And it's saying that, you know, some of the big car providers are now developing, you know, in car, you know, ordering systems to be able to order on demand. Just there's massive amount of things happening, but it's all about technology. And I think once we embrace technology and keep on doing our own bit of research, but, you know, you're either an operator or you're in technology. You can't be in both. So making sure that we get technology from an operator perspective that's actually cost effective, I think is critical, and making sure that you have those partners now that you can work with through the future is a critical part. But it only is building and getting your food so that it's delivery enabled and doing the basics right. I think it's a great revenue stream to have.
Matteo, have you got anything to add further to what Philip's just said? Yeah, no, we haven't discussed the metaverse has not come up yet as a subject. It normally does when you're talking about the future metaverse. I think it's quite interesting what could happen in that area as well. I mean, it's quite hard to conceive. I will leave this to everybody's imagination for now. Okay, thank you very much. As there's no more questions, I would like to say thank you to all those that have attended the webinar this morning, and a big thank you to Matteo for his great insight and Philip for answering all the questions.
Pleasure.
Oh, there seems to be one more comment coming through. Just bear with me 1 second, please. Everybody else is saying thank you very much and for your time, gentlemen. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.